Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hackathon Heroes. Hackathon Heroes is a show where I interview people who've had success at hackathons, however you define that, and hopefully hear their story and understand maybe how you can have success at your next hackathon. And today I have a special guest, Anna Arsonist on Twitter, who comes. This is a small fact that I only in my head, but comes right above me in the alphabets of crypto Twitter accounts. So it goes Anna Arsonist, BitBoy, Kale Crypto, and then Dapper Dan. So that's how it goes. Just the FYI, I thought about that too long, so I need to get that out into the world.
I didn't
I don't
even
know
know
who's
that
next.
alphabet existed.
Yeah, yeah, it's the ABCs of Twitter accounts and crypto. But welcome, Anna, and also we'll get way more into this. But I think you're the first one who at least labels themselves both as a developer and engineer and designer, which I think in the last guest we haven't had anyone really talk about design, and that's what I think we'll talk about at length this time. But welcome. How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's like a pretty nice day here, and just been working. Yeah, how are you?
I'm all right. It's been a weird day here. It's like rain and sun all in mixed in one. So it's well, I'm based in Stockholm, so it's like we get these days of like constant rain, and then oh hey, it's actually sunny in the afternoon. So you never know.
Yeah,
But
I'm
that's
based
just
in
life.
London, so I kind of also experience like the bipolar weather.
Awesome. So what things I like to start off with is kind of like a bit not philosophical, but your why. So, like I said, you do design and engineer work. So, for you, why hackathons? I think the Web 3 has this like culture of hackathons now and building things and getting it out there. But why do you do it? What makes you keep coming to these crazy things?
That's a good question. I kind of just like love the rush. At the moment, the current position I'm working in, I'm just a designer, so I'm the lead designer at Cyprin. Like
Nice.
we audit smart contracts and stuff, and we have like a few platforms for like education and things. And that's really nice, but I feel like I'm kind of sometimes I kind of lack the like fulfillment of being able to like build as often as I want to because we have like a
Yeah.
bunch of engineers on the team, but like I don't get to build as often anymore. And I love building things. I love coding, so just being able to like dedicate a 48-hour period or 72-hour period, like especially during these global hackathons, I can really get like my fix, I guess, and just like build something cool and just have a great time. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Got it. So you're addicted. Okay. Well, this is this is turned into a different show now. This is going to be an intervention. No, of
My
course I.
drug.
Yeah, yeah. I completely support that addiction. So I think many people who are rewatching this also have that same feeling. And I like this idea of like it's not like it's like a vacation from your day to day or even your job, but you're doing very similar work. I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially the people who do like DevRel stuff, and then I see them at hackathons, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not on duty. I'm not on clock. I'm doing my own hackathon project," which is it's nice to see.
It's also like the rush almost because like all of them are time boxed, right? All of them have a duration. The ones that I'm most familiar with are the ETH Global ones,
Yeah.
and they're like only 72 hours. And there have been times where I've submitted a project that's like literally been like 10 seconds before the deadline,
Oh
right? And
wow.
it's like really like exciting to like build something amazing in such a short period of time and so quickly. It just, yeah, it just feels great.
Well, I like this idea of like you building something quickly because I think, and this is not no offense to any of the previous guests or the future guests, but I'll say even for myself, a lot of hackathon projects are ugly in most cases from a design perspective, right? Because you are trying to get things out quick, and hey, this is an input box and a label, and then you connect your wallet and it does something. But I'm curious as a designer, what do you think is kind of the role of good design in hackathon projects? Like, is there an importance there? Does it help? Does it hurt? Is it distraction, as some people might think?
I think it definitely helps, especially in terms of like judging. I feel like a judge is way more susceptible to liking a project that might not be as technically superior to compared to another project if it looks good.
Yeah.
Um, and just having those kind of basic interactions, just really nice UX and like some decent UI, I think that goes a really long way in terms of having a judge go, wow, this is really, really cool. I pick this one, even though it's like not as technologically good as this one, which is just using like scaffold, for example.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's kind of the vibe. Especially me because I just focus on front end engineering. I'm not like a back end engineer, so I
Right.
can really dedicate a lot of my time to like polishing these things and like making it look as good as I feel possible in that time frame. So yeah, I definitely think it helps though for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what they say, double click on that as possible. Like, because I think maybe people will think, oh, okay, if I get into the design world, then I'm gonna like constantly not over design things, but I'll never stop. Like, when do you think it's like, okay, this is good enough. This looks good enough for the hackathon or an impress the judge, for example.
That's such a good question. Honestly, it's like a massive personal battle for me because I feel very, very inclined to not ship something until I perceive it as perfect. And in my professional career, it's definitely blocked quite a few things, right? We've like delayed product launches because I haven't felt that something looks good enough.
Okay.
And over the like, especially the last 6 months since I've been at Cypherin, I've realized especially the importance of like shipping an MVP and like just get it to a state where you would be comfortable showing it off, and then you
Right.
can like make those polishing elements afterwards. And a good example of this, which might not be like the traditional sense of a hackathon because it wasn't built over the course like a few days or a few hours. It was built over the course of a month, which is still an incredible like milestone. But Updraft, for example, which is like our education platform, we built it over the course of a month and we shipped an MVP, which I wasn't really comfortable. Well, I was comfortable with, but I wasn't happy with.
Okay.
And there were like a ton of UI things which I wanted to change, but we just shipped it and we said, hey, like this is very beta, very early access. It's like very work in progress. And like over the last 6 months, we've like improved the UX tenfold, and people love using it. And it's the goal of that was basically to get people to use Updraft because it felt better than watching Patrick's courses on YouTube. Patrick is the CEO.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just shipping an MVP and shipping something that you're like comfortable with, but it's like not 100% perfect yet, and then like polishing from there does a great deal, and it's helped me a lot because, as I said, I'm like the kind of person like if it's not perfect, I'm not shipping it. So yeah,
Got it. Completely out of like hackathon, not related to hackathons, but I this idea of just shipping it though, and the MVPs, I find it really interesting because I probably even told people this before too, but like they'll bring up examples of like really popular sites. So when they first shipped, like I don't know, Airbnb for example, and like oh look how disgusting it looks, but like look how popular Airbnb is now. So you have to like iterate on it. But like obviously the standard of what a good website looks like has changed since Airbnb had launched. And I wonder, for from your perspective, like not even this hackathon project, but even like let's just say Web3 in general, what is sort of the standard of good looking site? Is it just like crazy characters and emojis and things like that, or there's something deeper going on for now?
wow, that's a question. I think it's a lot of things. One of the things that I focus on the most, and you probably noticed it on like my website, for example, or any of the hackathon projects that I've built, is just interactions, like micro interactions. So like if I click on this button, does it like animate? Or
Yeah.
if I like hover over it, does it have like a hover state? And obviously, like there's a bunch of design principles that you should always follow, like heading sizes and colors and making sure it's accessible with contrast, and you should always keep those in mind. Um, but the thing that really sets a good website apart for me is those micro interactions. And linear. A lot of people gush over like the linear landing page, for example.
Right.
A lot of that I would say is fundamentally because of the micro interactions. So if you go like on the features page, there's like a really nice hover effect, which like I recreated once. Um, Rive is kind of similar. Rive.app, they have like a bunch of buttons that animate really nicely, stuff like that. Another good example is Family Wallet.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I've
would
seen that
say
one.
like 10% of the family wallet code is the wallet itself, and the other 90% is like all the animations because it's just
Okay.
so nice.
Yeah. The
Everyone
good
has
old 90-10 rule, as they say. Yeah.
like like it's crazy, and I think everyone now on Twitter especially is like, oh, I'm trying to make family like animations because it really like sets apart your user experience
Yeah.
on the app.
Okay, well, going back to the hackathons, then, like, I mean, I think you mentioned, if I wouldn't say like base level, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but like base level in hackathons, like I don't use any scaffold, any like boilerplate. I'm just gonna try to build the interface, and normally, let's say it's for me, it's simple, it's ugly, and then maybe the step above is like the scaffold, like each scaffold, or a lot of other protocols they build these, boilerplates that have some UI elements to them. And then maybe the third is like these libraries like ShadCDN, Framer. I think has like Framer Motion. But I guess from a hackathon perspective, like how do you how would you tell like a developer to level up their game on UI UX design quickly enough for a hackathon? Like, is it using these tools or having something pre-built before? Like, what's a good way of making it a better looking project? I guess.
I mean, if you have like a hackathon coming up in the next hour, then like yeah, 100% use one of the libraries that you just suggested. So like ShadCN, Daisy UI is pretty nice, like some of these ones.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you have a bit of extra time, you can and you've kind of given me an idea of this actually, making some kind of basic UI library for those hackathons. So like if you consistently want to use one type of button in your hackathon, so like everyone knows that you make these projects because of that button, you
Yeah.
want to like put that into like some kind of template that you can like clone that has like all of the basic dependencies that you're going to need, and then like you can just start using it, right? So yeah, if you're short on time, just use a library. But if you have a bit of extra time, for sure, like spend the time into crafting something that you're really gonna love, even if it's just like the UI stuff, like the font and the buttons and the background color and the accent colors and all of that.
Cool. So you're saying like doing like a signature button, like oh, like everyone knows that that's your project because you always use that one. It's like your signature of signed off, or
I mean, like that's just like an idea. I've
yeah, yeah,
before, but like I think if if you had a signature button where everyone was like, "Oh my god, that like cyan and blue button that has like this specific animation when you hover over it," that's the Dan button, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like something like that.
That's awesome. I was thinking about naming all. This is a complete tangent, but I was thinking about naming all of my hackathon projects from here on out, like name a product and then slash Adapadan production. I mean, no, normally there's like limit to naming, so I probably can't fit it all in there. But I like this idea of having signatures of on hackathons. So like,
Yeah, so one of the things that we did at Cypherin, actually, that was my idea, was on all of our GitHub repos that are open source. So one of them is Aderen, which is like a Solidity static analyzer.
okay,
So, we have like a little badge that says powered by Cypherin. And any open source tool that we have says powered by Cypherin on the little badge. And it's in the branding kit, which is going to be released soon. And
TM.
TM, and any of them, any project that's open source by Cypher and just has that badge, and it's like a good way of saying like, hey, we did this.
Yeah.
Another thing that we did was in Aderen, in the terminal when you run Aderen, it also says like powered by Cypher. So yeah, just like having those signatures also like really helps. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Well, I guess another question, talking about design and designers at hackathons. Obviously, I think majority of people who go to hackathons, especially like the East Global hackathons, are primarily just developers. But obviously, there's I think a lot of need for teams to not only have designers but other skill sets. But I guess we'll focus on design. But if you were a designer and you're like, oh, I'm looking at this ETH Global stuff, but no one's gonna pick me as a team, or I'm not gonna be able to build something myself. What type of advice or like strategies would you give someone on, being effective or at least having a good time at a hackathon, a Web3 hackathon,
Just like generally, or like from a design perspective.
from a design perspective? Yeah. Don't go. Don't say that, please. This is supposed to be a positive show.
just like, yeah, don't go, don't do it.
Stay home.
Wow, I think design is like one of those things like you enjoy it or you don't. I'm very much like ADHD hyperfixate on things, so I love it. But take pleasure in the fact that you're learning a skill and you're developing the like intuition, and maybe your first hackathon project will look like absolute dog shit because you chose a fluorescent yellow button with a white text and the content.
But that's your signature button, so who cares?
Yeah. Maybe your first project looks terrible. But hopefully over time your intuition will just get better, and it will make you more complete professionally and as a developer to be able to design something that at least looks good.
Yeah.
So if that's any sort of motivation, just know that you're just going to become better. And I think that's the goal of those hackathons, right? They're just to improve you as a developer or as just a person existing in that space. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Great tips. And speaking of looking good, now we're going to transition over to talking about a project or a site that you have designed and built, and you have offered up your personal site as the project to talk about, which I think, again, I saw the first iteration. I've seen this one. I thought the first iteration was amazing, and it couldn't get any better. But you've done it again. So we'll show this as I'm talking about it, so you can describe it yourself too. But I'm curious, what kind of went into designing something like this first, both from a technical perspective and even like how did you even come up with some of the what you put in there in terms of like the information around you?
Wow. I think the bento thing was already like very successful on like my first iteration of the website. So I wanted to like kind of keep that as like I don't know, it was like a friendly reminder of where we came from, I guess.
Yeah.
And from there, I think a lot of inspiration was drawn from a lot of designers that I like respect, and I talk about that in the blog post that I made that went with the website release. So like a good one is like Marco. He works at Figma or like Diagram, which was acquired by Figma, and like a bunch of other designers. From a technical perspective, I guess, I kind of just learned as I went, and a lot of it was pain and suffering and like trial and error, but eventually we got there. Because like as I said, I mainly do front end, so learning how to like use an API properly was like a bit of a wow, and like posting to an API was a bit of a wow.
Yeah.
But we made it. We did it.
Nice. I mean, what I love about it is it reveals a lot of information. So I'm sure it's like a lot of I don't know how many APIs you're calling here, but like it's got your location, which I hope there's a slight delay, or if that's like your how is that even working? Like, is it like from your
The location is just getting the city, and it's just posting the city, so it's not posting
okay.
my exact address.
Okay, that's smart. Okay, and then like the status, right now you're online, which is good because you're here. But what is that connected? Because I feel like I'm always online, so I'm not sure when I would actually say I'm not. How does that work?
Yeah. So kind of like you, I'm very like chronically online, and I use Discord a lot. So
Yeah.
what I'm using for that is called Lanyard, which is by Phineas. He's a great developer, and then so they have an API that basically just takes in like your current Discord status. If you're listening to Spotify, I'm not using the Spotify aspect, but if you're listening to Spotify, it shows up what like song you're listening to, what I don't know, like your profile, so your header, your avatar, your custom status, all of that. And then on top of that, you can also post key values to Lanyard. So that's
Okay.
the way that works. So on my phone, I have a bunch of automations which I don't know if I should show because there is like an edit code, so I'll try to hide it.
Okay. I mean, we can do some editing magic if there's something revealing.
So, for example, with the location one, we'll make that one. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, yeah,
Gonna focus.
yeah.
Well, if it doesn't focus, it says get location, and then get town and city from my location, get the region from my location, and then from there, I just make a post request to the API where in the key values I have the location. So that is the town and the city.
Oh, nice. Okay, so it's like a bit of a little different, a bit of different services all connecting, but it's all
Yeah.
showing there, which is really cool. All right, I have to check out Lanyard. I've never heard of that before, but it seems super cool.
If you're on Discord all the time like I am, then like you might as well. There's like no downside to it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, I'm curious, like how if I was like a developer, which I would say I'm struggling as a doing good design, and I see this, like, how would you suggest me sort of learning these techniques at least, or like getting design? And I say this because I remember, and I think this is when I started following you on Twitter. It was like someone had like maybe forked your repo, and then they just like changed their name, and like it was like the only thing. And they're like, "Hey, here's my personal portfolio." So maybe not just fork the repo and say it's yours, but how would I start learning from this site?
I mean, fork the repo. The old site is still open source. You can. The reason
Okay,
why that one was bad was, well, it had an MIT license, so I guess like do whatever the fuck you want. I would prefer if you acknowledge me. But the thing that was really bad was that they left their domain in the Google Analytics.
nice.
When I went onto my Google Analytics, I could see this person's website and I could track how many people were going onto the website, which like, okay.
Maybe that was a flex. I don't know if they were getting a lot of traffic or a little traffic. Maybe like, look, I have your website and I'm having more traffic than you. I don't know, but surely it was probably a mistake.
It was just like a lazy fork of just like changing the values, and I was just like, wow. And they couldn't get the map to work, so they just removed the map. And like, so it was
Lovely.
like a bunch of things. But if you're starting out, uh, people always ask me, how did you start out? And everyone thinks I took some kind of course or something. The way I started out is I met Miguel from WorldCoin. He's a very good friend, and this was before all of this Web3 stuff, and it was I didn't even know how to code. And we were talking, and I was like, I want to learn how to do this. So he was like, okay, this is HTML. This is like the skeleton of a website. This is CSS, which is like the styling, and this is JavaScript, which like makes it interactive. And I was like, okay.
Yep.
And he was like, this is Next.js. This is Tailwind. Make something and ask me questions. And I spammed him with questions like all day. And I was like, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? Until like it clicked in my head. Because I'm like the person, I don't work with courses. Courses don't stick in my head.
Got
So
it.
for me, it was just like a bunch of trial and error. So if you really want to start learning something, I obviously am going to recommend like Next and Tailwind because like they're the best. And from there, just have a project in mind. Mine was like some studying app at the time, and just make something. And if it doesn't work, keep trying. And then things will start to like make sense, and then you can start getting like an actual idea of how the language even works.
Nice. Yeah, it's always amazes me how quickly the learning curve is lately. I guess it's like, I mean, you're like, yeah, this is HTML, this is CSS, this is JavaScript, and then boom, Next.js tailwind. I was like, whoa. But I mean, that's how people are picking up things now, and I think that's really cool. Because, like you said, then you can get things that you like to build, and I think that's like what people get motivated for is when they see things that, oh, this is actually in my head what I thought it was going to look like or how it would work versus, yeah, start at the fundamentals and do a loop and then do other loops and here's an array, things like that, where it's not as
Yeah,
interesting to keep people going.
I think a lot of people have ideas and they just don't know how to execute or build them. And the biggest motivation for you can just be like learning to build those ideas. Yeah, if you have like $1 million idea but you've never built it, like my dad, for example, he had the idea of Just Eat before Just Eat even existed.
Oh,
Or like
wow.
Uber Eats. But he never like built it. So like someone else had the idea afterwards and they did build it, and then it became like the massive empire that is food delivery services now, right? So yeah, you could have $1 million idea, so you better know how to build it.
There you go. Well, I famously had the idea of Netflix before Netflix. So
And
I
you built it.
emailed, this is a true story. This is secrets revealed. I emailed the VC when I was like 13 or something like that. And I said, "Hey, I would like to like I got this idea for like a streaming service, like not you can have a box on your TV and then you can stream on the internet and that." And they were like, "Nah, that's never gonna work. You know, they've already tried that." And this was like way before any of that actually happened. And I was like, "What?" And, and then I just like let it slide. And then I'm not a billionaire anymore, so or never
Yeah,
was a billionaire. But hey,
billionaire idea. You should have built it.
yeah, should have just ignored the VC, but it was a crushing blow to my young ego. Well, this has been a great chat. We normally end every time about just if you had like a quote or like a philosophy to share with people in terms of going into a hackathon that like makes you either successful or motivated. What would that be, or what would you kind of share with people?
Um, just have fun and ship an MVP, even if it doesn't work. I guess that kind of ties into like the ETH Global way of doing it, which is like, hey, if you want your stake back, submit a project. It doesn't need to work, but like submit something.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, like even if you're not like amazed with it not being perfect or anything, still submit something, and you can like build from there. And if your hackathon project ends up being amazing and you want to like continue it and you end up getting funding and all of these things, like that would only exist if you shipped the MVP. So always ship an MVP.
there you go. That's great. Perfect. Well, what's the next hackathon for you if you have already one planned?
That's a good question. Tomorrow, actually.
Wow.
So I'm going to. This isn't a Web3 related one. It's just like a fun one. It's called.
I like how there's differences. It's like Web3 or the fun ones.
It's called EMF, and it's
Okay.
it's a campsite. So I'm going camping with like a bunch of friends, in the west of England, and we're going camping for the next 4 days. The campsite is like a massive hackathon, and
Wow.
we're gonna be coding a rave, and you can adjust the buttons and you can code how you want the button to exist. So you can like make it flash, or you can make it strobe, or you can change the colors of pink or anything, and you can deploy it from our website, and you will change how the light reacts live.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, first, the hackathon sounds amazing. Camping and hacking sounds like a great combo. So yeah, we wish you the best of luck at EMF. By the time this is recording, I think the hackathon will be over. So we'll even hear. Hopefully, you survive and thrive at this amazing hackathon.
Thank you.
Perfect.